Welcome to Four Seas One Family, where we share thoughts and opinions concerning life in Taiwan, the region, and the world. I'm your host, James Thomas, coming to you from Taipei, Taiwan, and I'm so glad to have you traveling along with me on this journey, and welcome to the show. Well, it's a Sunday night here. It's 11:47 here in Taiwan. It got a little bit late here, just having some champagne water here, carbonated water, whatever you want to call it. And doing an impromptu stream, and it's it's 11 something here, almost 12 o'clock midnight here, Taiwan time. So that means it's East Coast time, United States, almost 12 o'clock noon. So I figure I'd just jump up here and probably I'll be ghost talking for a little while, but at least I can say something what's going on here in Taiwan at least. And if anybody pops in here, I will open up some room here. Hey, how you doing? How you doing, Tim? How you doing? Oh, you just got back to Taipei. Hey, how you doing? Yeah, I'm just doing a little chat here, just relaxing today. Did not work out today. Went over to Starbucks, did some writing for tomorrow's recording. So I'm going to give a little preview of what I'll be talking about in my next episode a little bit. And maybe somebody, if there's any other people watching, give me some suggestions on what I can add to the episode and stuff like that. But basically, I'm going to be talking about how nations, in particular Japan and China, how they are subverting, haha, 盗用, a lot of the functions in the United States, and how they may be not only, how would you say, encouraging, but maybe even financing some groups in the United States that are, well, opposed to each other, and causing a little bit of rally up in the States. But just a little bit of overall idea what we'll be talking about. And you see a lot of things on the internet, and especially recently between the conflicts between financial conflicts, arguing back and forth between China and the United States. And people say, wow, and also I should also add, with the heightening tensions here across Taiwan Straits, which PLA, People Liberation Army aircraft, and coming really too close to the coast of Taiwan here, which is causing Taiwan, like, hour after hour, scrambling their F-16s, wearing down their military gear and stuff like that. China has a lot of airplanes, really outnumber the ones that we have here in Taiwan. And Taiwan, these planes cost money to fly, to get up in the air. And, F-16s are not like, the Model Ts, easy to replace parts and stuff like that. So the radar institutions here are really keeping an eye on what's flying near us. And if you live in southern Taiwan, you're going to hear military jets taking off and flying very low, especially if you're in the region of Tainan and Jiayi. So, 不能掉以轻心, don't drop your guards. But basically, I want to talk a little bit about what's headlining a lot of news, especially here on YouTube. And basically it says, is China and the United States at war? Going to war. But my point is, they were already at war. And the form of war right now is not the traditional war of ground fighting and stuff like that. Before it gets to that point, war has already started. And, with the cyber conditions right now, you most likely, if you're very observant, listening to the word bolstering and stuff like that, you can see when nations are really to go at each other's throat. Now, the CCP and the United States in reality have been at war ever since the Korean War. And at the very least, which I'll mention my next recording, at least at the beginning at the end of the Cold War. Now, if you have any history of what happened during the Korean War, I'm not going to get into it now. But in most recent times, people can probably dig up enough information or have at least a little remembrance of what happened during the Cold War between the United States and the USSR, former USSR, I should say. And the, spying and subversion, stuff like that. But in this case, the focus is mainly on the United States and China. And the Soviet Union is in there, but they've been keeping a lower tone because they have issues of their own right now too. But nevertheless, they are active, and you still, if you're a citizen of the world, should be aware. A lot of people do choose to stick their head in a hole because because they're busy just surviving. But in his situation, especially today with the form of how war is taking place and the weaponry being used, it's just changed. Now, like I said, in my opinion, I think the CCP has been at war, at least with the Western world, not only the United States, ever since the Korean War, at the very least, after the Cold War. Now, but however, it's like it appears that over the past 15 to 20 years, the United States has not been really aggressively fighting back. Now, I can talk also about reciprocity and how China has really not opened up a lot of reciprocities, occurrences for other nations, fairness. And, I think about 2 or 3 episodes ago, I talked about, how this situation the unfortunate situation also falls in many Western nations' hands because they did actually ravage China a lot. I'm not only talking about stuff like the Opium Wars, Boxer rebellions, really not with the West, but the United States, the Britain locking up China into their tea problem. I don't want to get into that right now because it would give it out too much. But seems that a lot of the contesting disputes between China and the United States, right? They have taken on a different form, and mostly the forms are psychological or media or social warfare. That's right, psychological, media, and social warfare, right? And the goal is, especially from the perspective of mainland China, is that they do it, or they try to get it done through controlling or even the subverting of um, educational or social institutions as well as media and news outlets, right? Educational, social institution, and media and news outlets. Media also include, I should say, entertainment also. Now, it's probably should shift to be called ideological subversion, right? And the goal is to formulate a way to dictate information along with the actions, these and the subversion of taking control of policy planners, think tanks, and like I said, the outlets of news, especially the points that can heavily influence public opinions or perceptions. Now you probably, like my friend Randy over in Shanghai would say something like, as far as news, the subversion done through financial methods of the New York Times, for example, or advertisers being threatened that if they advertise on a certain platform that is not pro China, they won't have a certain type of advertisements placed on there or requested to be paid on their service. And money talks. And when you threaten someone's flow of making a living or raising their return on investments, it's amazing how people all of a sudden can have selective amnesia, or how would you say, find a way to negate what should be done and what needs to be paying the bills. And this is kind of unfortunate. Now, there are a lot of governments or institutions or simply, I like to say, overseas agitators that would like or very much like to see the withering away of the foundations and institutions that hold at least the ideas of democracy and its freedoms. Yeah, there are nations that would love to see that happen to the United States, the slowly taking apart, the deterioration, the withering away of institutions that at least on the surface hold the values that represent democracy and its freedoms. Now, the thing is, China has over the years observed, how would you say, the Western world very, very carefully. I mean, there are so many members with children, CCP members who have children in the United States learning and at prestigious institutions. And when they go back to China, they know a lot they understand deeply about how the mental feeling of the United States as a nation, as a group, the cultural aspects. But you don't see that much reversal. I mean, most Americans go over to, say, places like China, even here in Taiwan, to learn the language, but they really don't get involved much in, say, like a lot of Chinese citizens in the United States are even involved in government research. How would you say? Government research. Can you believe that? You got a Chinese national in the United States working, at, say, at a school like Stanford, that's probably has been given a grant by the U.S. government to research something, right? But you don't see you don't see any American citizens um, taking part in any project in China that's sponsored by the Chinese government. And this is partly a fault of the United States to allow this type of not allowing reciprocation. But like I said, China has observed the West very, very carefully and has learned how to use the protections people have in the West, especially United States, or generally in this democratic nations, to subvert and use local laws and protections within these nations to focus on and sometimes invest in groups that investing groups. I mean, invest in groups. I mean, not only focus, but invest in groups that are sometimes diametrically opposed, or groups that have some disagreements within, say, the United States or a democratic nation. These groups have conflicting viewpoints, and this builds up further the dissent between these groups, right? And what happens is that the unity of, say, as the nation as a whole slowly deteriorates. It's like it turns people against each other. So what I'm saying is, China has studied the Western world, especially the United States, so well that they understand very clearly the internal runnings, okay, and even the methods and even the pace of how detention occurs in the United States. And they focus on these groups. In some cases, well, support in some kind of way, that indirectly, maybe through say, a Chinese Progressive Association, or CP, I think that's what it's called, through different groups, Marxist groups actually, who support China. Through these groups, they do some kind of support or maybe some kind of indirect funding to have all these groups supported in some way, but they're at the same time going against each other. And that further corrodes or deteriorates, say, the national structure as a whole, when you have Americans going against each other. So the goal here is to, like, slow cook the local population in destructive elements that's slowly cause them to self-destruct and in many cases implode. See, 孙子兵法, this is a method of going to war with a nation without actually using weapons. you use the tools available to the local population to deteriorate itself. And some of these protections, China doesn't have their own nation, but they're using it very well because they have access. Maybe this is why 45 Trump has, at least he did. This is a point I really agree with him on, that declaring certain, say, China news agencies as a direct arm or linked organization to the military, to the Chinese military or government, as I forgot the term that they use, but this is something that I think is very, very important. How you doing, Earl? I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Art of war. That's right. That's right. It is the art. It is an art of war, but I think most students at West Point, they do study that. But the thing is about things in America, we spend so much time with our so-called cultural fantasies in a way, because a lot of stuff we learn in school in America about, say, people like Christopher Columbus and all that stuff. Every nation has this kind of way of pumping themselves up, and a lot of it is information that we get is just not true. But let me continue here. Where the United States needs to learn more about how other nations see us, because the term "Make America Great Again," what does that mean? Great for who? But let me continue with this focus, because I just want to jump in here for a few minutes, right? So China is using a method that would slow cook American society, the local population, and like I said, I call it the destructive elements, right? That slowly cause the foundational unity in the United States to self-destruct or implode, corrode, whatever the term you want to use. Now, under this type of, say, unrestricted warfare, outside influences, in this case China, can cause, and sometimes violently, the dismantling and eventually resetting of national norms within democratic nations. Now, the goal is, once again, is to actually cause so much corruption where a nation is forced, if they don't just, go to civil war, to reset. And when a nation is resetting, that's when they become quite vulnerable to outside influencers that are able, at this point, to inject certain policies within, say, our government that would actually not be of any real social value to us. We see this happening in Africa. We see this happening in smaller nations that feel that the Western world has not paid enough attention to them. Then when China comes in and offers to fix their things and build their bridges and build their schools and give them so much money, they jump on it. But China knows that this would put them in debt. They can't pay it back. So China says, well, okay, you see your port over there? Won't you let us have that for 10 years or forever? And these politicians, they just run away, pocket full of money and everything else. Let me see over here. Hey, okay. Well, I don't do many lives, but I'm going to be doing lives. I'm going to be doing lives every Sunday, my time here. And I'll be doing the lives probably Monday, Taiwan time. And I'll be allow people in the United States on Sunday morning to hear me. But let me continue. Now, when a nation or a democratic nation is forced to reset their cultural norms, that means the way they communicate, interact, whatever, it changes the codes of conduct that govern the laws, the interactions and relationships among people in democratic nations, right? And this would force certain social aspects, laws and stuff like that to be rewritten and applied. And sometimes these narratives may fit opposing nations, and they'll see it as favorable. Now, this is something that we should pay extra attention to. Now, totalitarian governments and their leaders, they see, they see that, or they feel that democratic governments, or those that try to export democracy, as an Achilles heel that they sometimes have to work with. Okay. They mainly fear that democratic ways of thinking, along with the ideas of personal freedoms, may somehow infect the people they currently have control of. I mean, if you just imagine, if you are the leader of a totalitarian or authoritarian government, you would worry about people thinking outside the box you set for them. That is quite difficult for some of these leaders in totalitarian nations to swallow. And sometimes I should not only say the leader, I should say even the group, or this certain club of leaders, these Illuminatis of a certain countries, they feel threatened by this. Now, authoritarian and totalitarian governments, they keep a tight lid on what types of conversations and activities are allowed to be presented in publications, educational institutions, even in the arts and national and local media. They keep a tight lid on that. And sometimes the methods they use can be quite harsh. It can be quite harsh. Now, another thing is, and this may be a problem with reciprocation. Like, for example, in countries like the United States, right, representatives of foreign governments are even allowed airtime, right, to explain or promote their points of views, right, in the United States local media. You may hear a Chinese or Soviet government representative, whether they're a diplomat or some kind of other envoy of another nation, putting op-eds or opinion pieces in newspapers in the United States without any being blocked or being edited or restricted in any way. Now, however, in most of the time, in most cases, they are quickly confronted with serious questioning in the United States that may, most of the time, contradict or dismantle their points of views. I mean, you probably watch news shows, Newsline, CNN, CNBC, whatever news, Fox, whatever, when they have a government official from another country, come on, ask a question, but the reporter or host, whatever, always comes back with questions at least. Sure, there may be some U.S. media that would just like to go with the flow of the foreign government representative. But in most cases, most reporters will try to debunk what was said and stuff like that. And I'll mention that later, and I'll show a piece of that later in my next broadcast. Now, this is something to keep in mind. In the West, we do this, but almost all representatives of foreign nations serving in democratic nations, Western nations, they're allowed to do this freely without editing or being blocked or censored in any way. When Mike Pence was having a debate with the vice president, the Democratic vice president nominee Harris, when he was speaking, he said something about China. They cut his feed and everything went black on television in China. That sucks. Now, there are many Western-based. Well, let me back up a little bit. You see, no, there are many Western-based social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and others. The list go on, that allow representatives of foreign nations to place their opinion pieces and stuff like that without any problems at all. I mean, they get information on Twitter, or YouTube from government officials or departments and organizations from China, like China Daily, CGTN, Xinhua, and others. They get that a lot, and it's posted freely out to the world, to the Western world. But what about the other way around? What about the other way around? However, in the case of, say, China, for example, it is impossible to allow American government or political representatives any fair airtime to express their points of views freely to the Chinese people in the Chinese media. Really, you never see that. You never see an op-ed by a U.S. government official that has been released on Chinese media platforms or regular newspapers without being edited or something like that, or redacted by every word. There's a U.S. embassy representative that just left China. He wanted to post an op-ed in Chinese newspaper, but they refused, totally refused. And what is this narrative I hear, especially from pro-China YouTubers here, that you always hear bad things about China? That's not true. Or the world is not fair to China. Don't hear China voices. Really, is China letting their people hear the voices? Really, from Western representatives or leaders? Sorry, this isn't just not the case. Representatives of foreign governments are allowed to post anywhere in the United States. Their opinion pieces are not blocked or censored. And what is so hypocritical about this point is that also in the case of China, right? Chinese citizens in China are not allowed legally to cross over the Chinese firewall to take part in discussions, taking place on these platforms like Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and stuff like that. Now, we can go ahead and debate why China has been blocking this. And we can also talk about how their subversion of U.S. institutions or social media platforms in some ways, they use their power to actually get help from them to actually prevent their population from learning about what's happening in the outside world. So this is briefly what I will be talking about in the next episode. And hopefully you guys can give me some ideas on what I can add to this. And I'm sure I'll probably forget something. That's the general idea of what I'll be talking about. And hopefully I'll be able to talk about it a little bit more fluently. And I just jumped in here tonight. Oh, it's 15 minutes after midnight here in Taiwan, Monday morning. So if there's anything else, type it below and give me an idea on what I can talk about. So just let me know. I had to turn off the microphone there. I didn't want you to hear me slopping down some water. And well, see, we had Timothy, Leon, Juan, and Earl jumped in there. Wow, I got 2 people listening to me. I will erase this after I finish broadcasting. So I figure I'd just give this a shot, and maybe one day I'll be able to pull in enough a crowd where I can do this more on a regular basis. And maybe even invite people. Who knows? Reciprocity. Yeah. I'm doing my best here, but when I do a broadcast, I don't have any assistants to help me monitor the chat area. So my eyes shoot around here, and I'm in my home studio, which is a little dark, but it's easy. Reciprocity. Thank you, Earl, for jumping in there. Earl, where are you in Canada? I think if I remember right, you're in Canada. or on the East Coast or someplace. I'll hold on here for a little bit longer and then I'll back out here. Let me see. On here for a little bit. I don't know why this thing does not. Oh, okay. Okay. Over in Washington. Okay. Oh, 9/17. So Earl, what do you think would be a good time, at least for you, for me, if I do live streaming here in Taiwan? So right now it's 12:17 Monday morning. Okay. And it's 9:18 your time in the morning on Sunday. Okay. So I can do it, say 1 a.m. Monday morning here. And that'll allow you to be up at 10 o'clock. I'll give it another 3 minutes here, then I'll shut down. There's about a 20-second delay between myself and YouTube. Okay, Earl. Okay. Well, look, thanks a lot for jumping in here, Earl. Thanks a lot for coming in here. Okay. Okay, good. This time is good. This time is good. Okay. Um, thanks for jumping in here. Maybe I'll be able to get more people in here one day, and we got Jimmy back. So, look, thank you for jumping in there and listening to my rant there. And if you like, let me know, Earl, if you like me to add anything or give me ideas and topics that I can talk about. Okay. All right. Just ring. Just have that. I just hit the bell. Okay. Give me an idea what you like to hear, something like that. Randy, he broadcasts, I think my time like in the afternoon. Maybe I think he was on today about 5 o'clock p.m. My time. He's in Shanghai. We're in the same time zone. Okay, I'm going to back out of here. Thank you very much. If you're watching us on Pinterest, no, Periscope and YouTube. Take care, everybody. 再见. Take care. Yeah. Wear a mask and stay healthy and safe. Later, Earl. Later, everybody. Ciao, ciao.